Hello, everybody. I'm back. It's been a really long time. So, yesterday I did something that I think was kind of interesting for me. I watched my own video, the video I made while I was living in Korea, discussing just life in general about what it's like to be in Korea. And it was interesting for me because I don't remember what I said, and it was years ago. So watching my own video where I talk about a lifestyle that's totally different and unique is currently what I'm experiencing, and it was actually really cool to get to hear what I had to say, because sometimes I actually disagreed with myself, and a lot of the time I still agreed with what I had to say, but it was just kind of interesting to hear someone else's perspective, even though that someone else was me. Because yeah, I was in a very similar situation to where I am now. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to talk for way too long about life in Japan. So if you're curious at all about what it's like to be a foreigner in Japan, I will give you my unabridged, I believe I know the meaning of that word, unabridged attention and opinion on just what everything's like here. I'm going to be really blunt, so I apologize ahead of time if there's any sort of foul language, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time if anybody gets offended. I have no intentions of offending anybody, but I am going to use a few generalizations. So please remember that whenever I reference something and I say every Japanese person or every foreigner or something like that, or foreigners or Japanese people, I'm talking about generalizations. It doesn't mean literally 100%. There is always outliers to every single case. America is a great example of that. The country is like 50-50. Half the people think this, half the people think that, and no one ever really fully agrees, and that's how the country is never ever actually on board with any plan at all. So yeah, there you go. Starting off with the generalizations already. So where should we even start? This is a very ranty video. I'm going to try to do it in the same style I did the last one, because I'm really glad that I did that, and I want to have another one of these just for me. So even if you guys never watch this, that's fine. This is for me. So I hope some other people find it interesting as well. All right, so let's see. Let's start right before Japan. So right before Japan, I was living in Vancouver. The reason I went to Vancouver was because I was living in America while I was working on game development, and I had an issue with really bad advice an immigration lawyer gave me, which is its own complete story and video. But let's just say I got really bad input from somebody, and it forced me. Canadians get 6 months every year where you're just legally allowed to tourist in America, which is basically how the old people live there during the winter. And that's awesome, because for America, they just get Canadian money. It's not like we're allowed to work on these visas. And really, I don't understand why you wouldn't want more people doing this. It's just bringing money into the country. So I went down there and I did that for 6 months because I wasn't originally planning to stay there. Then I came back to Canada and I got stuck. They actually didn't let me back into America. So what happened was, at the time I had a girlfriend that I was seeing down there, and she also wasn't an American. So we discussed it, and she said, well, I'm kind of in a similar boat. Neither one of us has a lot of stability in this country, and the immigration system is not that friendly in America, so let's go somewhere else. So we went to Vancouver, and eventually we split up. And I was in Vancouver on my own for a really long time, and I was working at a indie studio building video games. Well, sort of. We were building mobile apps based around playing for kids at a park. So it was an interesting concept, but there wasn't a lot of game mechanics or the things that I personally really love. I'm not 6 and on a park. So what we ended up doing was the job slowly shifted from a lot of gameplay development and stuff to mostly data collection, because that's really what appeases investors most of the time. So as a programmer, I wasn't really working on the things I had signed up to work on. So I was getting kind of bored with work, and a wonderful company. I mean, I had really nice coworkers and a really good setup, and I had a beautiful apartment. Life was great, but unfortunately I'm a little bit weird. And I got bored. So I started just watching random stuff on YouTube, and I think what actually was finally the key that gave me this idea was like a random YouTube couple that just make videos about their lives, I guess similar to this, popped up, and they were in Japan. And I was watching all of their videos, and I was like, wow, they seem happy. I'd like to do that too. So yeah, I signed up and came here. So here's a fun thing for anybody who wants to travel. Working holiday visas. This is the first one I've ever used, and I feel like I should be kicking myself for this. Working holiday visas are about a 2-week application. There's usually a very small fee, and they're one of the easiest visas I've ever attained in my life. The requirements are incredibly thin. And what that gives you once you're on a working holiday visa is it actually basically makes you a citizen that can't vote. You can take any job you want, or you don't have to work at all. You do whatever you want, just like you would in your own country. Usually when you're a foreigner, for those who have never been an expat before, your existence in that country is tied directly to your visa, which is tied directly to your job. If you're not contributing to the economy by working and paying taxes, they want you out. And even those jobs, you're only allowed to hold them as long as the company can prove that no local is capable of doing what they need you to do. So literally every single resident of a country gets dibs on a job. Now, that's what it says on paper. Realistically, what that means is you can work in these jobs if the company wants to hire you. Because if a company really wants me as a programmer, there's a lot of Japanese programmers, for example. They could probably do the job just as well, if not better than me. But if they've met me and the boss knows me and he goes like, I like this Matt guy, or let's say I've done maybe an internship and I've worked there for a little while, they can say basically, well, he understands the systems and the workplace in a way that no other person in this country would immediately know. So we would have to spend time and money trying to get them up to speed, or they could just say, we need someone who speaks English, and then boom, it just rules out like 99% of Japanese people. So most people have something about them, especially if they're a foreigner, that makes them unique to a country full of people. So in Canada, for example, my last company, we had one of our workers was from Mexico. Easily, if they were looking to hire him, they could say, we need someone to do Spanish translation. And that, again, boom, that rules out most Canadians. Almost no Canadians really speak Spanish. Obviously some do, but yeah, that's a really easy way for a company to justify hiring this guy. So we need a programmer with his skills and who speaks Spanish. Oh my God, no, there's not that many of those. And the government goes, yeah, okay, hire him. So anyways, your life gets tied to that. When you're on a working holiday visa, it isn't, which is why I can do what I'm doing right now. I can spend my money and live in Japan and have this experience while not needing to be tied down and kind of under the thumb of a company. When a company has you under a working visa, they know it. And I don't think I've ever worked anywhere where those companies treat their employees 100% fairly. I'd love to say that's the case, but yeah, there's always just a little bit of an advantage being taken because those employees know that if they lose their job or they go into like some harsh negotiations and the company decides you're not worth this anymore, you're out of the country. So your whole life gets uprooted. And a lot of people are taking these jobs in hopes of turning it into permanent residency down the road. So if you're going to go into another country, switching jobs is a big ordeal. So these working holiday visas are wonderful. So if you want to go somewhere, I highly suggest it. Okay. So that's visas. As I said, this video will probably be way too long. So let's get into Japanese life. So that was kind of what influenced me to come here. I just started watching videos of other people. I started looking into the language a little bit. Korean, I never really learned Korean. When I was in Korea, I learned a few things like 쓰레기 봉투 주세요, which means please give me a garbage bag. The useful stuff, the things that are absolutely necessary. But I never got to the point where I could discuss life or make friends on a deeper level by speaking Korean. So I decided that I liked Asia. I really enjoyed a lot of things about the culture here. One of the cultural things that really stands out to me is people are aware of all the other people. In North America, we are selfish assholes. You get on the bus and the dude's like with his stupid ass cell phone and no one punches him in the throat. Well, that's just our culture. That's how it is. You are loud and we are obnoxious and we are ignorant, and that's just part of our country and our culture. And for the people watching this right now who are getting mad at me for saying this kind of stuff, it's true. I'm from there. It's just, that's how we are. And I can spot an American like a mile away when I'm in Asia because when they're on vacation, they don't change. You can tell who lives here and who doesn't based on how they act in public. And that's probably something you don't even notice or think is really possible until you experience life the way that I have, living in all these different countries. So Yeah, and other people in other different countries have all their own crap too. Don't take it the wrong way. We're not the horrible people of North America. It's just that's one of the things I find about our culture that I think is a little bit negative. We're very selfish. It does have its own perks and benefits too. There's a lot I miss about that selfish nature, but yeah. So when I was in Asia, I thought it was really nice. You get on the bus, it's so quiet. If you're like trying to do something, people will like pay attention to you. They won't, you know, I've had people bump into me, like they walk straight into me and then they go, the fuck? And I'm like, I was just walking down the street. You weren't paying attention. You rammed into me and then you blame me for it. Whereas here, it's immediately very, very apologetic. Gomen nasai, like the bowing and everything. And so there's a lot of that I really liked. But I thought, you know, the last time that I was in Asia, I really struggled socially. And that's something that is very common for expats because it's a very different culture. You can't really experience a life that's going to be too different from what we're used to, other than Japan, Korea, China. Like those countries are very different. Especially Japan, I think, is the most. Korea is a little closer, but still very different. China is a very different place, but I will say that their attitudes and mindsets kind of link up with ours a little bit more. They're less rule oriented and more break the rules and do what you want, which is a little more of that selfish nature, like kind of like we are. So, yeah, I'm long-windedly saying I decided that I wanted to learn how to speak Japanese because I thought if I came here and I don't speak Japanese, I'm just going to have the exact same experience as Korea. It's going to be really lonely. I'm not going to like it. I'm just going to end up friends with foreigners again, and I'm going to make a couple, like, you know, meh, local friends, and that's about it. So I've been here about 8 months now. It hasn't quite been a year. I lived in Korea for 1 full year. Yeah, that's backfiring a little bit, but we'll get to that. So the first thing that I did is I signed up for language class. So I moved to Tokyo, and I went to a school in Akihabara, which is very famous for people who don't know for being weird as shit. There is like a bunch of sex shops and like anime doll things, and like you can go into like stores and buy like a bunch of those naked figurines, like, you know, pressing their boobs together and like leaning down with a little skirt flying up behind them, and that stuff is everywhere in Akihabara. So I didn't know that actually when I signed up for the school. I watched all these videos of different schools, and they seemed like they had a really good video and a really good classroom atmosphere, and I liked that. So I wanted to go to that school. And then when I got there, I realized, oh man, this is like nerd culture central. And I'm pretty nerdy, so I'm not that upset by that, and I wasn't that put off. I'm pretty, you know, open-minded with other people and how they are. But I will say, you definitely got that attitude or that general vibe from the people at the school. Most of them were here because they loved anime and they wanted to live in one. And that's not really how life works. I've seen some anime, especially since I came to Japan. I've watched a lot more than I used to. I'm not a giant anime fan, but yeah, anime is nothing like life here at all, actually. Other than sometimes the scenery. The beautiful scenery definitely exists. So yeah, I went to language school. Now, this is going to be my personal experience, so I'm just going to tell you guys about how it went for me. First things first, Japanese schools are going to teach you in a Japanese style. Japan, I think, is best summarized. We could take this whole video and turn it into a 10-second thing. Japan is the 60s still alive. Most people think when they hear about this country, oh my god, they're so technologically advanced, they have robots doing everything, and oh my god, their trains are all like super fast and efficient. The trains are good, that's about it. Even the robotics, yeah, they have robotics labs and research labs that are, I guess, well known, but it doesn't affect everybody's life. What we see and what gets leaked to us of Japan is entirely different than what it's actually like here, which is why I like living in other countries, because my knowledge of Japan wasn't zero before I came here, but the reality and the image that we're given is so different. And I will say, oh my god, are my North American friends ignorant about this country a lot of the time. So yeah, it's not overly technologically advanced, and that is mirrored in their classrooms. So their classroom system is probably one of the worst systems I've ever seen for learning a language, but it is very tailored and suited to Chinese students, I believe. So in Asia, the difference with schooling is you are expected to basically be a memorization robot. Information comes in, you like copy it down, and then you can regurgitate it at will. And that's how they learn. How we learn is very similar to a degree. And this is why I really dislike school and education in general. Regurgitation is not intelligence. What we should be focused on is understanding and critical thinking skills and things like that. And we at least have started to embrace that in North America. We're trying to get there. We don't really know how. And that's the problem with schools and reforming to the future way of learning, is we're just sort of starting to understand the brain. But what we need to do is you need to understand something. So instead of giving me a math problem and expecting me to pump out the answer and then teaching me how to do the steps in the middle so that I can show you my work, that doesn't matter. A lot of times in math, I could just follow the formula and not understand for a second why it works the way that it works. And today, working as a programmer, it's astonishing to me that this is how we teach math in schools. It just doesn't work. People don't understand shit with math, and it's super frustrating, and it's a horrible topic, and everyone thinks it's boring and hates it. Math can be fun when you get it, but we don't get it because teachers don't teach you that. That's not the system and style. So that's how it still is here with everything. So instead of understanding something or, being able to communicate, which is what language is primarily about, spoken communication is clearly your number one goal of any language. Although some people prefer reading, and that's fine too. You can do that. But yeah, speaking probably should be your number one goal. So in Japanese school, we never spoke, almost ever. The teacher might ask one question, but they crammed us in like sardines, which they promised they wouldn't do. And then they never let us talk. There was no talking time. It was just listen, here's a bunch of information, and then you'll be tested on it, so you better know it. And so we wrote tests like by the end of the first semester. I think I was writing a test every day, if not every other day, either based in kanji or grammar or whatever. We were just tested and tested and tested. And the final passing grade requirements were pretty high. You needed to get like an 80% or something. So from 3 months, you needed to go from no Japanese to passing a pretty hefty, I think the test was over 2 hours long, just solely in Japanese test. And you needed to get an 80% to pass. And I got like a 78. And I was like, I studied and everything. But the kicker for me was that at one point, the teacher stopped the class and she just asked a question that we don't ask in our schools, but she asked the whole class. She said, who's the best? Who do you guys think is the best in the class? And there was one other guy named Tommy who was very, very good. His Japanese was quite impressive. I found out later he'd studied for like a year in advance. But so a few people said Tommy, but most people said me. And I thought that was odd because I ended up failing the final test. So why did everyone think I was so good? And the reason for that was, when I went home, I didn't really go home and study Japanese grammar and kanji the way that they were teaching us in class. I would go home and I would try to make a list of words I felt were necessary to communicate with people. So I learned things like useful or not useful. They don't teach you this because they don't want you to say this is not useful. Yakuni tachimasen, by the way. It's very, very not useful. Not useful is very useful. They don't like it when you say that though, so careful in class. But yeah, so I went home and I kept teaching myself all these words and all these phrases and all these comments and all these grammar rules in my own way. I actually went out and bought a different textbook that had a different format of teaching because the one they gave you is just, it's awful. So I really didn't like Japanese school or their style. And I thought it was hilariously ironic that I was failing their tests while impressing all the other students to a degree they thought I was the best in the class. So yeah, I'm kind of a bit of a rebellious person and I'm a bit of an adventurous person. So I wasn't all that worried about not going anymore. So my plan originally was to come here for 6 months and just study Japanese and then spend the other 6 months trying to just create a life here so that by the end of my 1 year on a working holiday visa, I could decide, do I want to be here or not? And if I do, hopefully I could communicate well enough, I could find work. Because I don't really want to be an English teacher forever, although I don't mind using that as a bridge to get somewhere. It's not really a career. If you do that for too long here, you're stuck. It's a great stepping stone. It's an awful place to be forever. So keep that in mind, anybody who wants to teach English in Japan. There's not a lot of going up. You'll never be respected to a level of like other people. Everyone kind of looks not down on English teachers because they make good money, and here making money is more important than anything else. But it's such an easy thing to do, and everyone knows it. Everyone's had an English teacher in school, and they've seen you. You're a dancing monkey. In Japan, generally, the way that they use English teachers is they have an English teacher and a Japanese English teacher, and you're just kind of there for like pronunciation to help fix a few things. Like you don't really even do much. So it's a really janky job. If you want to just make 40K a year, 45K a year, or something like that, doing very little, come on to Japan, I guess. The JET program's always accepting new people, and I think they have a 5-year limit, so they basically are churning us through like a hamster wheel.
Oh,
So, yeah, where was I? So, language is something I'm interested in. I like it. I don't mind working in that field, but yeah, that was my plan. So, after 2.5 months, the school called me into a meeting, which was very, very crazy for me because it was a Japanese only meeting. And I was like, hi, I'm Matt. I'm from level 1 and I don't know anything yet. I came to Japan with basically 0 Japanese. So, 今は私の日本語まだまだですけど、ちょっと話せます。That means my Japanese is like so-so, but I can speak a little. And yeah, so they called me to a meeting, and for like an hour, no, it was almost 2 hours, they drilled me about the program because they'd heard me complain a few times in class because I went home and learned, like, I think this is useless. For an example, they taught us the word jibika, and then they tested us on it. Jibika means otolaryngologist. Now, I'm not sure how many of you heard me say that in English and went, oh, I know what an otolaryngologist is, but probably at least a few people went, the fuck is that? And that's in your native language. I can say it in 2 languages now, which doesn't feel overly necessary for a level 1. You can see some people in the hallway making some noise. I apologize if you guys can hear that. So yeah, they would do things like that, and they would like test us on like volcano and otolaryngologist, and we wouldn't know how to say how many. So I thought it was really odd, the choice of vocabulary they were teaching at a level 1 program. Not to mention the rate that they teach you kanji. So let's just stop for a second and discuss Japanese language because it's a really important part of life here. Spoken, it's not that complicated. Basically, verbs go at the end. Instead of us like, I ran home, you'd say home, I ran. And the way that the verb at the end is important in Japanese is that that verb can change the conjugation of the whole sentence. So like, hashiru is run. So the standard form of hashiru is the ru form, which ends with basically an ru sound. Hashimasu is the more polite way to say the exact same word. It doesn't change the meaning at all. It's exactly the same, but mas, if you hear mas, people are being sort of polite. Ru is just like among friends, but sometimes you need to use the ru form in the middle of the sentence if the word's not coming at the end. So really you only polite in the last portion of a sentence. But the reason you need to know the base of the word, because ru is added as that's technically considered the base word. This is confusing, I apologize, but that's how it is. So the other thing you could do is you can conjugate the verbs, and this is where you can change the verb to change the sentence. So hashitai, tai is the conjugation on any verb that means you want to do. Hashitakunai means you don't want to do something. So the whole sentence can change because all the words like I want to go, I want to do this, I don't want to do this, all that is just attached in the verb. So that's how Japanese works. So the ending or the last thing or the verb portion of the sentence is incredibly important, if you're curious about that at all. The other thing about Japanese, I'm kind of wondering if I have any example. I've got one here. The other thing about Japanese is kanji. So kanji is actually derived from Chinese, just flat out Chinese. Kanji is the Japanese version of Chinese characters, and basically they're more the old style. Chinese characters have a more modern, updated version of them because frankly they're goddamn impossible to understand. The reason for that is Japanese has 3 different lettering systems. So these ones here are all kanji, these big guys here. But there's also, I'll see if I can get this close enough to the camera for you guys to see it. I think that's working pretty well. So there's also 2 different forms. These more simple looking letters, and usually you can tell because there's not so much going on. Like that one with my finger there is da, and then that one's like an N kind of sound. It sort of looks like an N. So those are called hiragana. And then there's another script called katakana. Katakana and hiragana are about 50 something letters. So if you think about English is like 20 something, right? So I should know these things. So English is about 20, hiragana is about 50 something. So you're already starting at about double the complexity of the English language. Now we have upper and lower case. They don't have any of that stuff here. So I guess we'll make it fair. It's sort of similar. Then katakana is the exact same as sounds. So it'd be like the uppercase and the lowercase. But when you write in katakana, it indicates to everybody, and I don't fully understand why they feel they need this, but they indicate that it's a foreign word. And it lets them change the sound a little bit, but it's pretty much exactly the same. So every time you see katakana, it's normally an English word. It doesn't mean it's always an English word. Sometimes it's German, but a lot of times it's an English word. Although arubaito means job, and I have no idea what language that's from. So the reason that this is important is because Chinese characters make up around, so 50 for katakana, 50 for hiragana, about 2,300 for kanji. And they're more complex. And they're similar sometimes. Like it'll be the same shape with like a little tiny on the bottom, and that changes the whole meaning of everything. So kanji is incredibly difficult to learn, to the point where basically even if you've learned all 2,300 or something, and that's just I think the basic to be considered literate. There's actually more than that. Even if you've learned all of those, and they have multiple readings. So it might only have one, you might have one kanji and it might have 2 or even 3 different ways to pronounce it. So 2,300 characters plus 3 pronunciation methods. And here's the kicker. Even after studying Japanese, I thought I'd learn this eventually. I don't know how you know which one it is other than just knowing. So if you see a word and it has a bunch of kanji and you know every single kanji and the 3 readings for every single kanji, you still can't necessarily read that word because you don't know which of those 3 readings it is, especially with people's names. Even Japanese people, there's literally no way to tell how someone's name is read without having them tell you. So that's their writing system. I'm sorry if this is considered insensitive, but that's a shitty writing system. It's garbage. Koreans had the exact same one, and they literally went, this is dumb, threw it away, and made Hangul. And Hangul is like 20 characters and covers the entire Korean language. So if you want to learn something and you want to read, Korean is much easier to read than Japanese or Chinese. But Korean looks fancy because they'll take 4 letters and they'll put it together so it looks like a crazy letter, but it's actually 4 unique individual letters. It's the easiest reading system I've ever encountered in my entire life. I literally think it's probably twice as easy as English. So yeah, that's how Japanese works. So the reason this long-winded story needed to be told was because in Japanese school, they teach you kanji if you're a Westerner at the same pace, at least the school I went to, at the exact same pace as Chinese students. So Chinese students can already read all 2,000 something kanji in Chinese, and one of the readings in Japanese is the Chinese reading. So all they have to do is take the letters they already know and add one new sound or something to them most of the time, and the meaning is almost always the same. So a Chinese word and a Japanese word, the Chinese and Japanese people can communicate by writing to each other, because even though they won't know 100% what's being said, they can get the gist of it because the words are the same. So if you wrote like potato and then some hieroglyphics and then like hungry and then some hieroglyphics and like want, I'd be like, oh, you're hungry and you want a potato, all right, I get it. And that's sort of how they communicate. If a Japanese and Chinese person need to talk and have no other system. So Chinese people learn Japanese really, really fast because, well, they're already studied up on it to a degree. We don't. We take about twice as long to learn Japanese based on studies. It's a very difficult language for us to master. And luckily for me, I don't care really about reading. Being illiterate is fine for me. It'd be nice to be able to read, but my primary goal was to communicate because I was looking for social connections, not necessarily reading, because that literally takes years. There's no way to rush that. So yeah, that's school. So I didn't love that. And then I met a bunch of people there. And here's the thing about expats. Expats are usually dicks. And I won't say it was all that different here. I made a bunch of friends, and they were very strange. I had a lot of, like, probably 2 or 3 times I had people that I was starting to get close to just vanish. And I don't know if I have some sort of odor or something. I've asked people, they say I don't. No, this school was it was one of the most unique social experiences of my life. I usually don't have any trouble making friends, and nothing stuck there. Although as far as I know, everyone was kind of doing that to everyone else too. Like, I don't know anybody who really made any close connections there. Maybe like one friend, but that seemed to be about it based on everyone I still know from the school. Yeah. So I wasn't loving it. I was living in a part of Tokyo called Shiomi. Shiomi is basically named because I think shi is like waves or something. And so that's, and mi stands for like being able to see. So it's like where you see the waves. So it's out by the ocean. And it's actually a really beautiful little area. It's really cool, totally worth a visit if you're here. Unfortunately, though, it's really not very accessible from a lot of the other main train lines in Tokyo. It's a little bit, even just transferring in Tokyo Station to Shiomi takes quite a long time. So I felt really kind of isolated because I wasn't close to any of the stuff going on in the city. You want to be kind of near like Shibuya and Shinjuku and stuff if you want to be near like the happening spot in town. And yeah, so I was living in a house with a older Japanese lady and another Japanese roommate. So two Japanese roommates. The lady I lived with was wonderful. I just loved everything about her. She was the sweetest, kindest human being, and still, I think to this day, my favorite person I've met in Japan. But you can't really just be friends with someone in their 50s if you're kind of young and here to experience life and stuff, right? So I went out to a bunch of events and language exchanges and everything, and now we're going to get into what it's like to be in Japan properly, not just my story. So, Japanese people are very shy by nature. They are very open to admit that. We're very shy. They're very nervous, and foreigners especially are extremely rare here. I think we don't even make up 1% of the population, and I'm talking about all foreigners, not just white foreigners. Or Western foreigners, sorry, other people from Western countries. But yeah, we're very, very rare here. So when you walk down the street, it's like if you go to like a rural village in Africa and they're gonna be like, oh my God, I've never seen white skin before. That's kind of how it is here in a lot of places. You get gawked at, you get stared at. I'm also over 6 feet tall and moderately muscular, I suppose. So that gets me a lot of looks too. At this point in time, I've given up. I'd dress like this and just go walking down the road, and I'm like, there's not a Japanese person in a muscle shirt coming from the gym. That just is not a thing for anyone else here. For me, this is how I look. Actually, it's getting kind of warm. So, yeah. So this is attire I'll walk down the road in, which gets me a lot of looks, but I get a lot of looks no matter what I do. And even like on the train, I can just like lean against a pole, and then when I look up, like 3 people like bury their heads real fast. And the longer you're here, the less you notice it. Like your brain just starts to not really pick up on this stuff, but it is definitely happening. So you're an anomaly. You're weird. People are curious and intrigued, but they don't know how to deal with you. And culturally, there's a lot of issues. So in Japan, one of the biggest things that I struggle with is the way that they make plans. The way Japanese people tend to make plans is like months in advance. So if I want to hang out with you, let's say 3 weeks from now on Wednesday, I will ask you, like 3 weeks from now on Wednesday, the 24th or whatever that would be, are you free for dinner for like an hour? I don't know. And you'll say, yes, I am free. Let me like pencil that in. And everyone here is phenomenal at keeping plans. Like, I'm pretty good at this stuff. I really don't like to cancel on people, so I almost never do, and I'm almost always early. And people here blow me out of the water. I can't keep up. They plan stuff so far in advance. If I put in my phone and my stupid notification doesn't go off, I don't remember. They never miss it. I don't know how everyone here is so good at it. But yeah, they're phenomenally good at keeping plans. So that's what they do. Everyone makes plans like super far in advance, and they just keep all these plans. For us, I'm sure any Westerner watching this can understand, I don't know if I want to hang out with you in 3 weeks on Wednesday. Maybe that Monday is going to be a really shitty day and I'm tired, or I'm busy, or I've got stuff to do that week. I don't know how that week is going to be a month in advance, or that far in advance. So we don't generally make plans like that. We wing it. We just go last minute, or call me up and be like, hey Matt, what are you doing tomorrow? And I'm like, I'll hang out tomorrow. That sounds fun. Okay, cool. And then even like the next morning I might wake up and be like, oh, why did I say I'd do that? I don't want to do that. But it's like, whatever, I'll go now. So here, like, yeah, you plan super far in advance. And that drives me nuts because that's not really how I do things. Not to mention, I don't have a job. I work 7 days a week, but I'm always free. So if someone wanted to grab dinner, I can do that literally any day of the week, and that would be fantastic. So it's really, really tough to make social links with people here, because the other thing we're used to too is I'll see the same friend. I'll talk to my best friend I talk to like every other day, or maybe I don't see him for a week, but it's like we chat a pretty decent amount. Whereas here, it's like you just have a bunch of like really kind of meh friends. And there's two terms in Japanese that I think are really important. I learned them right before I came here because I realized this was going to be an issue. Honne and tatamae. Tatamae means like, oh, you look nice today, even though that's bullshit. Basically, tatamae means bullshitting people. Honne means like no bullshit, straight to the point, tell me the truth. And Japanese people have these terms because they realize how important tatamae and honne is to their culture. So you can't just say what you're thinking in the North American style, or you're kind of abrasive. People don't really want to be told things directly. So everything here is an indirect conversation, which maybe is nice. Maybe that's your personality and you like that. I am blunt as shit. And so it drives me nuts. If someone has a problem with you, they won't tell you. If there's any sort of issue, you won't know. It'll exist, it'll plague you, it'll affect your life, and no one will tell you what's going on. So that's one of the things that I really, really struggle with here, because I don't ever know what anyone thinks of me. And that's something I realize, like, we're pretty honest about that. Like, if I don't like you, I kind of don't answer you very fast, and I do a couple things. We're still a little bit subtle. We're not that direct in North America. But here it's like there's no way to tell. You're just ghosted. And that person might really like hanging out with you, but they're literally just busy. And it's super hard to get that down. The other thing about Japanese life and culture in general is work. Oh my God, do people ever work here? It's like 13 hours a day every day, and that's just standard. Isogashi means I'm busy. And so you constantly hear people, oh, isogashi desu ne. And that means like, oh, really busy lately. Or like, oh yeah, life's busy, isn't it? And yeah, everyone's always saying that. And that's just kind of how it is, because most people here work a ton of unpaid overtime. And then other people are somehow blatantly ignorant towards that fact. I've talked to some Japanese people that are like, no, people don't do that here. And I'm like, I have 12 friends who have all told me they work insane overtime. And when I say 12 friends, I mean 12 acquaintances that I see once every 2 months if I'm lucky, and I hardly know anything about them. So yeah, these deep-rooted connections that we get through the way that we interact with each other in English is very difficult to form here. So I found immediately, even though my Japanese is not very good, I am capable of carrying on a conversation for an extended period of time. So I can make friends in Japanese, although I'm kind of like a toddler. My vocabulary is limited and my grammar knowledge is limited. I only studied for 3 months. So I can communicate, but it's not perfect. It's definitely not good even. But I am capable of meeting people in that way. But then when I speak to them in English, even if their English is as bad as my Japanese, I find that they're much more open. And they tell me, a lot of people have told me too, they feel more comfortable speaking in English because they feel like they don't have to do all these culturally expected things to, I guess, to communicate. So yeah, this is a very different way of living, a very different way of interacting. And for me, it's not fitting. I'm really glad I came and did this. But I don't plan to stay in Japan because it's very similar to Korea in many ways. And some of those I really, really like. And I miss them when I'm not here, which is one of the reasons I wanted to come back to Asia. But yeah, I'm just done with this lack of friends. And so another thing people say here is taihen desu ne, which means like, it's difficult, isn't it? And that's what you hear. So like if you complain or anything, a lot of people here have told me I complain way too much, which may be true, except not here. To you guys right now, I'm complaining way too much. However, to them, I'll be like, oh man, today it was really, really difficult. And they'll be like, wow, you complain way too much. I'm like, wait, what? I didn't even get into the complaint yet. Like I just opened my mouth, and you haven't even listened to the story where I complain yet. Like I'm not going to do it now, but yeah, thank you. That's kind of rude, I guess. Yeah, I've been told I complain way too much for like the first time I've ever said even the slightest negative thing to people. And the other thing people love to tell me here is that I'm wrong. And we don't do that so much. We kind of like, we feel your emotions. So if you say, oh my God, I hate my boss, you'd be like, what did that asshole do now? Right? Like we kind of join your team. We're like, okay, like let your emotions out. We want to hear them, which is another reason we let you complain. We want to hear your thoughts. We want your emotions out. We want them to be, because that's how we click. That's how we form these connections with people socially. And here, that is not really how people communicate. And I've listened to a lot of Japanese people just talking amongst themselves with their friends, and they kind of have very surface conversations for what we consider. Like you don't really get into the deep nitty gritty stuff. And I don't know. I've never really considered what life is like without that, but I don't like it. I like to talk to my friends and to be like, okay, here's something that's bothering me. Here's what I'm thinking. So yeah, that is a huge cultural shift and a huge cultural difference. So the other thing is back to the fact that we're living in the 60s. This entire culture is like cash based. Even Korea had like my debit card was also my credit card, and it was also my transit card. So I could go to the subway and boop, I could get on a taxi and boop, I could go to the store and boop, and I could pay for everything like that. It was really cool. Phones were awesome. Everything was fast. The internet here is rated like the top 5 in the world or something. I've never had slower internet in my entire life, and I come from Canada. It's awful. I'm getting, even now, I've been trying to do this website work all night, and it's taking like, I'm like refreshing the website and it's loading like an old like modem, like a dial-up modem. It's so bad and slow. I think right now I'm getting, at night I usually get about 0.8 down. For anyone who knows internet speeds, it's atrocious. Yeah, so there's not a lot of things that are technologically advanced here, except maybe the trains. But even the trains, they're on time. I don't know if I'd call them technologically advanced. Some of the bullet trains are pretty quick. The issue with the transit in this country is it's ludicrously expensive. An hour and a half train ride from Tokyo to Nagoya cost me $130. That's a lot of money for one way, an hour and a half. In Europe, I can like fly to other countries for like 50 euros. And here I paid 140 bucks to get on a train and go in one direction. Most people end up taking like night buses because of that, because night buses are like maybe 40 or 50 bucks to go one way somewhere, which is still kind of expensive. Like we can travel around for not a lot of money in North America, not to mention everybody has a car. But yeah, traveling around here is quite pricey. Even if you drive, there's some crazy tolls and stuff on all the highways. I don't drive, so I don't know those well enough to really get into them with you. But yeah, they are extensive, so be careful. I guess if you want to travel around Japan, you will spend a ton of money. So I have one more trip I want to do before I leave the country, and that's Osaka and Kyoto, which I have not been to yet, and I hear Kyoto is just beautiful, so I want to go. I'm thinking I might wait a little longer until it snows a little bit or something. But yeah, so back to life here, because I don't feel like we've completely wrapped this subject up yet, but we are getting there. So people are kind of distant. When you tell them like you're looking to make more friends, they tell you you're wrong. Everyone wants to be your friend. I'm like, well, how about you? And they're like, I'm so busy. And then they leave. And I'm like, well, everyone says that. I actually dated someone for a short while here. And even that was like the exact same experience. Like I almost never saw her, and it was like basically the same as every other Japanese friend I have, where almost never communicate, I almost never see you. And then yeah, eventually she just got like, and didn't want to keep doing that. And I was like, fine by me. This is the worst relationship I've ever even tried. Yeah, so that just seems to be how it is. Now, again, not everybody is like that, and there's certainly some wonderful people here. But the few people, so sorry, another point that I think should be covered is the reason I moved from Tokyo to Nagoya was because in Tokyo I felt really isolated, and everyone was always busy, and everyone just wears the same suit and does the same thing. And even when you watch TV, there's like a little face in the corner on literally every show. And so far, my running theory is that face is there to let you feel comfortable to have emotion. So like when the face, it's like always like a celebrity face or some person who's watching what you're watching, and then they'll laugh or they'll, be like, oh, when something surprising happens. And it lets you kind of get trained to emotionally react the same way as the face on the screen. I've talked to many expats. This is a running theory from most of us. And yeah, so it just doesn't feel like, I didn't feel like a place I wanted to live. It was a big city, had lots of jobs. It was a really cool place in a lot of ways. There's a bunch of really funky stuff. For tourists, it is wonderful. But for living, it's just like these crammed little spaces. Everyone's busy. Everyone's exhausted. If you look around, everyone says they like it. But again, I feel like that's not tatamae, because everyone says they're happy. Everyone says they're great. But when you look at them from afar, they're like sitting on the subway and they're just like heads dozing off, and they're falling asleep. I went out the other night with a friend of mine, and we went to a cafe, because that's what you do here, is you go and sit in a cafe instead of sitting at home or something. That no one goes to everyone else's house. And yeah, at the cafe, like there was a dude who came in, just sat by himself, and he just like slumped in the thing for like 45 minutes, and then he got up and left. And I was like, that dude doesn't seem happy to me. But I bet if I stopped him outside and I was like, you happy with life? He'd be like, definitely, it's great. And yeah, so there's like so many aspects to life, which is why I'm just letting myself ramble on this. But yeah, so I didn't love Tokyo too much, so I decided to come to Nagoya and try something different. And the other thing I wanted to try is, instead of just two roommates, I wanted to try a share house. I've heard some good things, I've heard some bad things. I wanted to try my own experience, so I picked a share house. So this is actually a mansion, and it is legitimately a mansion. In Japan, they sometimes call apartments mansions, so don't get too confused. This is an actual English style mansion. There's 40 rooms. The kitchen has like 3 countertops to it. I think there's like 7 showers. I think there's like 9 toilets or something like that. Like, it's a legitimately huge house. It takes me multiple minutes of walking to get from here just to the kitchen. And the reason I picked this was I thought it would be really interesting to live with like up to 40 Japanese people. And I'm in Nagoya, where it's not a very popular foreigner city, so I knew that it wouldn't just be like a bunch of foreigners hanging out. Like, I thought it'd be really cool to really integrate myself, which is what I like to do when I live in countries. I don't like to go and live in the foreigner section and be with all the foreigners. I want to go and experience life the way that I guess it's normally lived here. So I signed up for this, came to the share house, and it's not that the people here aren't friendly or aren't nice. They're wonderfully nice people. They're just not friendly in the way that I'm looking for, I guess. Like, people, no one has ever invited me anywhere. I've invited people to a lot of different things, and they've said no, they're too busy every single time. And so far, my best friend here is, there's one foreigner, like my style Western foreigner, that lives here, who's from England, and he's my best friend in the house by a long shot. It's the only person I've gone out and done stuff with. And yeah, and I still talk to everybody every chance I get. Whenever I go downstairs, I made myself a rule when I moved in that I would socialize as often as possible. And yeah, every chance I get, I still sit down and chat with people a little bit. Whether or not they speak English, we'll chat in just Japanese or whatever. But and yeah, that's fun and nice, and everyone seems eager, and like other people, you can see them kind of do the same thing, but no one seems like they're willing to get out of their room and really kind of be social with each other. And there's a few people who form little cliques in the house, and they have their own little group of friends, and a few people are dating each other now. But yeah, I'm not invited to any of that, nor is the other white guy here. And I don't think it's like a vehemently bad thing. Like, they're not trying to be racist and outcast us or something. It's just, we're different, so we don't get invited places. We don't get included. And in Canada, we had people when I lived in college that were like that, and they would like from other countries, and what we would do is we would go out of our way to like grab them, be like, you need to come with us, we're going to teach you how to go get groceries, we're going to teach you all these random little things, and like how to use the bus system and all this stuff. And no one has ever extended that kindness to me here. I don't know if that's because I'm a large white male, therefore a lot of places everyone just assumes you're fine. But yeah, I've had a lot of hardships here, and other things, like I've had to negotiate healthcare plans in Japanese at a government office. I speak very broken, poor, low-level Japanese. I should not be doing these things alone, but that's just how it is because there's no help offered to you. Yeah, and unlike Korea, where at least I could read, no reading here. So I will say that life here is a little better for me than Korea, just because I can speak enough to get by. I don't ever feel like I'd be lost or that people wouldn't be willing to stop and help me. People in the street are incredibly kind. As I said, it's a very collectivist society. My voice is starting to go. I've been talking for too long. And let me just take a sip of water here. Keep this video rolling. See, it's a very collectivist society. So everybody is willing to, you know, help you out if you need it. But again, no close social ties. And people seem sometimes a little bit offended when I point that out to them here. But as far as I can see it, that's how it is. And I've watched a lot of Japanese people interact with each other too. Like this house has been wonderful for that. There are a lot of chances to just kind of eavesdrop on people, and they don't seem to mind because they know I'm just trying to learn. Yeah, but nothing seems as tight-knit as we are. Not to mention the other thing that we do in English, or at least my friends and I do, and I think a lot of people I know do, is like we insult each other in a teasing, fun way. Because if I say some horrible thing about you, but we're really close friends, you know I mean it in jest, and we're good. And it's kind of like, it's a way that we actually form closer bonds, because I kind of test our friendship, because I'm like, you're an ass face, and then you're like, oh, it's so sweet. Now we know, okay, we're good friends. And yeah, like my best friend says horrible things to me all the time, and I'm like, haha, like it cracks me up when he gets a good joke in or something. It's really funny, and that's because I know he doesn't mean anything negative by it. Meanwhile, if a guy on the street said the same thing, I'd probably be bothered by it. So that's a way that we kind of build our close bonds and friendships, and that's just Japanese in general doesn't really have swear words. You almost can't say bad things. Baka means idiot, and kuso means kind of like they're like, oh shit, and that's about it. There's a few other words that are bad, but nothing that's as strong as what we have. So they really don't understand English swearing at all. So even when I swear, a lot of them get very uncomfortable. And I'm like, no. This is just normal conversation. I'm not trying to do something bad. Like, it's just another layer that doesn't get understood. And then last but not least, I think I'd like to discuss not foreigner relations, but Japanese on Japanese relations, which is something I've talked a lot about and I've gotten to witness and experience a decent amount. So I'll tell you what I think of it. And again, the whole video is just what I think, okay? So don't, get mad, please. So I made a new friend recently. I met him on an app for language exchange. So just platonic friend, by the way, no datey stuff about it. But yeah, he wants to learn English, and I'm looking for, I guess, just social connections. Plus, I'd love more chances to practice Japanese, because despite living in a house full of Japanese people, they rarely talk to me, so more practice will be good. So anyways, he's a living embodiment of what I want to talk about next. So I'm going to tell you a quick story. So we went out, and he was asking me about how I would meet people or whatever, and I told him I had a date coming up. And he asked me, oh, where did you meet the date? And I said, oh, on this app called Tinder, which is used pretty much everywhere nowadays. I'm sure most people listening in English know what Tinder is. So yeah, I don't like Tinder very much. I think it's kind of a terrible way to meet people because it gives you a very shallow approach to them, not to mention the accessibility of unlimited new people kind of makes you never give a shit about the person in front of you. So I think I could make a whole video about that. But yeah, Tinder, I think, is not a great way to meet people. But anyways, I tell him about the existence of this. Now, this dude has a wife, so I don't think anything of it as I mentioned this. And he goes, I want a girlfriend too. And I was like, yeah, man, but you got a wife. Now, I know a lot of people are kind of just down with cheating, and that's how it is. I don't really like it that much personally. I think it's kind of a poor thing to do to somebody. There's a lot of people out there who are willing to have open relationships and stuff like that, if that's what you're into. But to lie to someone that you're married to, I feel like is a really bad thing, because you're kind of supposed to be committed to that person. You don't have to be. It's not, I guess, obligated, but it'd be nice if you are. So, yeah, dude's like, oh, I want a girlfriend too. And I make a little joke. I'm like, yeah, man, you got a wife though. And he's like, yeah, but I'm a man. And the way he just casually threw that in there, I've had people do this to me in North America too. I definitely know a lot of people who cheat on everyone else in NA, and been involved in pretty chill conversations about it because they just kind of naturally assume that I would be doing that as well. So far, at least, I hope I can keep this up, but I have not cheated on anybody. And for any exes watching this, confirmed. Because yeah, like someone would watch me ramble for an hour that dated me. So anyways, yeah, so I kind of like brushed it off because he didn't really say too much about it. And then like a day later, he messaged me. He's like, so I tried out Tinder. It's very dangerous. Haha. And I'm like, yeah, this dude's going to be cheating on his wife. The other thing I asked him, because I don't know the guy very well, we've just met. And I said, how long have you been married? And he's like, 8 months now. I was like, wow, 8 months and you're already looking on the internet to cheat on your wife. And the thing about that is cheating is everywhere. This is not a Japanese problem. But it is extremely common here, not just to cheat, but not really to form a close bond with the person you should be closest with, right? Your wife or husband is usually the person that you're very, very close to, at least in our culture. And I think that's an interesting thing to examine when you're thinking about the closeness of relationships here in Asia or Japan specifically. So for us, if I have a girlfriend and my friend invites me to dinner, and it's just the two of us, he's like, yo, just you and me, let's go. Okay, she's not invited. But if he invites me to a party at his house, she's pretty much guaranteed to be invited. She's kind of like my other half, hence the saying, my other half. And, ooh, ow, this desk sucks, by the way. Sorry, I hit my knee. So that's how we treat relationships. We treat them as a very close bond, and you get to know everybody around you. So if you're dating me, you're going to know all my friends, and I'm going to know all of your friends, and we kind of like mix our lives together. In Japan, they're separate. So almost all of your personal friends usually come from work. Most people I've met, that's it. So either maybe someone you knew from university or something, or work. And those are like the two spots you seem to get friends. Which again isn't that rare in North America. A lot of people still really don't have friends from work, but I know most of the people I worked with after work, we didn't hang out. We were friends, we were acquaintances at work, but then we'd go home and hang out with our friends. Um, and to this day, all of my friends, almost all of them, really come from all these different places. And I've met some people through work that I'm friends with still, but not really. It's not like you hang out with everyone. And here you will go out with your coworkers for dinner multiple nights every week. And so what happens is, let's say I am Japanese male husband. I'm going to go hang out with everyone from work, and then maybe on the weekend I'm going to go hang out with my buddies, and then we're going to do that typical plan thing, right? Like 1 month at a time. So a month in advance, I'll be like, oh, my buddy Kyoshi wants me to go hang out with him, so off we go and we hang out together. And this ends up, what happens is you split. You are almost never together. Usually your wife goes and does her thing, and you go and do your thing. And this is really common. You don't do a lot together unless it's just the two of you. You don't bring your friends to come hang out with her. You don't bring her to come hang out with your friends. And you don't go join her and her friends on something. That's just not typically how it works here. So what that means is that's another separation. The person you're with, your significant other, is not all that close either. So dating and relationships is pretty different here as well. The expectation is that, I'll give you another example. This girl that I knew, I told her that I really wanted to go hiking. So I asked her, I was like, when are you free? Because I can pick a day and take a day off. Let's go hiking. I really want to go and do that. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm really busy for like the next month. And I was like, every single day, I'm literally free 7 days a week. You don't have one day for the entire month. You work part-time. She's like, no, busy every day for the whole month. I was like, all right, I guess if you're busy, that's how it is. And then the next day I was talking to her and I'm like, hey, what are you up to today? And she's like, oh, I'm going hiking with my other friend. And it was just the two of them. And there's really no reason they couldn't have included me in this, but it's just not expected here. It's not like you'd bring me to a thing. You already have plans with this one friend, so you're going to go do this with your one friend, and that's just how it is. You wouldn't be like, oh, hey, my other friend said he really wanted to go hiking. He's never been. He's some foreign dude who's here. Do you mind if he joins us? Like, that'd be fun, right? And I'd be like, of course, bring him along. Like, that's just how we are. We're very inclusive. So despite it being a very collectivist society in terms of caring about everybody else's space and comfort, it's not very inclusive. So we are a individualist society that's more inclusive. They're a collectivist society that's less inclusive. And the other part of that, though, is it is inclusive as long as you're already part of the group. So if I'm friends with one person, like I have one friend here, and she was also friends with the other guy that lives here that's a foreigner. So every time I asked her to do anything, she just automatically invited him because she basically treats this like we are a collective. So once you're part of a group, so if you're going out with the office, you never just go out with like one coworker, you go out with like the group every time. Or you never invite just a couple people from work that you actually like, you invite like everyone, right? So again, that's just kind of culturally how it is here. So I think I've rambled for about an hour now. I hope this gives you some perspective on Japan. There's a bunch of other little things I could go on for a long time because I've been here for a long time. I've covered a lot of stuff. But for me, I don't think this is culturally what I'm after. My favorite Japanese people that I talk with so far are usually the ones who really want to go live somewhere else. And it's because they have the same mindset. They don't like the way that it is here. And it's pretty common for Japanese people to also feel upset about this. They feel like they don't enjoy the system. They don't enjoy the way you have to talk up to people all the time. There's a whole language respect thing, just like in Korea, where you have to talk up at work. There's actually a whole section of Japanese I don't even know any of the words because it's like the super respective one that you hear people say when they're working, and they don't like that always talking up, and they don't like everything being so old-fashioned. If I want to pay for something, if I want to go buy groceries right now, it's 11:30 at night, so they're probably closed, but pretend the grocery store's open. If I go there and I don't have any cash, like physical cash in my wallet, I can't pay for anything because they don't have debit cards. They have cash cards. And what cash cards do is they let you go to a debit machine and take out, or an ATM and take out cash. And that's all they do. They don't pay for anything anywhere else. So you get a cash card and you go to the machine, and you can get credit cards here, but they're very, very difficult to get for foreigners. I can't even understand why. Actually, just bank accounts in general are very difficult for foreigners. But yes, you get cash out, and then So one time I went to the grocery store. This literally happened. I didn't have any cash in my wallet, and I went, "Oh, damn it!" And I had to put everything back, and then I went out. You can't just tap a card, right? So I had to leave the grocery store, and I had to walk down the road to go to where the ATM is. And I went up to to get money out of the ATM, and oh, what do you know? The ATM's closed. It's like 8 o'clock at night. Like they closed the ATM. The ATM is in a separate portion. The only bank I'm allowed to have is with the post office. So they have the post office and they have the ATM out front. The ATM's in a separate locked portion so that you could, keep it open all night and accessible. But instead, they still close it at night. So you literally can't get access to the ATM. So then I had to walk like blocks and blocks away to a convenience store, and most of those have ATMs, so you can get money out of those. But like the ATM is closed, I have to pay with cash. Like it's a very, very old style system. And I've had Japanese people get into arguments with me trying to tell me why this is better. And I'm like, have you ever used pay, like touch to pay? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, then before you tell me how great cash is, try the future. Like I've tapped my card and paid for things so quickly and easily, and I love it. And then all your money is accessible anywhere you go, and it's great. So yeah, just little stuff like that can really start getting on your nerves. But mostly I spend most of my time alone here because it's just really tough. I meet a lot of people and I make a lot of acquaintances, and there are certainly people who are interested, but I'm not a big drinker, and unless you're drunk all the time, it seems like socializing is extremely difficult. However, I will say, that's a point I can't believe I haven't gotten to for a full hour. Drinking is huge here, and I think the reason for it is it's when people finally lighten up enough to socialize. So when I have gone out for drinks, people have been way more social and way more interesting. You have way more in-depth, tolerable conversations. But I don't really want to live somewhere where I need alcohol to have a decent conversation. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Japan. Unfortunately, a little negative. So my apologies for that. But yeah, if you're curious about this, I also made a video when I was living in Korea a few years ago. I watched it last night. I think I sound a little bit different than I do now, but I probably share a lot of the same opinions because Asia is still Asia. It really hasn't changed that much. So my current life plans are I'm looking to move out of here because the other thing is I don't want to work 13 hours a day for a terrible paycheck. So I'm going to need a job somewhere else. I'm really glad I came here, and I'm really glad I did this, though. It's been a really interesting experience, and Japan is a really cool country with a lot of interesting stuff to go and do. But yeah, it's just not socially for me. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, I have really enjoyed my time here, and there's so many good things to talk about too. But yeah, I guess when you're kind of on your way out of somewhere, you've got that little bitterness in your mind, so a lot of that negativity feeds out. But as I said, I was just going to try to be blunt and straight to the point and honest with this video, so that's what I've done. Yeah, I guess let's just take a second here, make sure I haven't missed anything, although I talked for a very long time, so I doubt it. Yeah. Other than that, that's life here. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to post them in the comments. I will type out replies. I don't expect to make another video, although I guess if there's enough requests for something, I would gladly make one more of these. Yeah, so let me know if there's anything else you'd like to know. And that's my general opinions and thoughts on Japan after being here for 8 months. So I hope you found that interesting. If you made it to the end, wow, bravo. So thank you guys. I'm going to get back to work. I will see you guys later, and feel free to watch whatever else I've made. I've pumped out a lot of videos on random stuff at this point. Thanks again.